In this tutorial I'm going to show you how to make this drawstring beach bag, which is perfect to take your towels to the beach, but it's also perfect to hang toys up on the back of doors or maybe use as a laundry bag. Now it isn't lined, but I do show you how to do a French seam, so the inside of the bag is finished off beautifully with no raw edges. So there's a technique that you might like to learn there as well. So let's take a look at the materials that you're going to need and then let's get sewing. These are the front and back pieces of my bag. They measure 13.5 inches across by 16 inches deep, but you can make these any size that you like. So you could go super sized and make it into a laundry bag, or make it quite small for a gift pouch, or maybe something to keep cosmetics in. Of course, all of your applique will have to grow or shrink accordingly. So let's just take one side for now. I've got a couple of 6-inch strips of yellow fabric that are going to be my sand. The fabric behind doesn't have to be in the yellow if you don't have very much, because you're not actually going to see that. You'll see why in just a second. And then for my beach huts, I've got 3 huts, and these measure 4 inches by 3 inches. And they're going to sit quite close together. On the back of all of my pieces I've already put some heat and bond, so this is a fusible adhesive. You iron it onto one side of your fabric, or on the wrong side of your fabric, and then scratch and peel away the paper backing and re-iron it onto your fabric. A couple of reasons I love it. It helps to keep everything nice and secure, and because I'm not going to do a satin stitch around here, I'm just going to use a straight stitch. It helps to stop the edges of the fabric fraying. Although I must admit I do quite like the edges of the fabric fraying. So 3 beach huts, and then my roofs are 3-inch triangles. They don't have to be exact. It doesn't matter if things are maybe a little bit wonky. And I'm just using scraps of fabric from my stash. Now if you don't have a stash, maybe you're new to sewing, have a look in your fabric store for charm packs or packs of 5-inch square fabric. It seems silly to go out and buy a yardage of fabric when you only need some tiny little pieces, so maybe even remnants would be okay. Or take a look in charity shops, because this doesn't have to be brand new pristine fabric. It could be an old skirt or a baby's dress or a pillowcase. But I think with beach huts and the sand and the blue of the sky, I think it needs to be something quite bright in colour. My little doors, again just made from scraps. These are 2.5 inches long by 1.5 inches wide, and again they don't have to be exact. And then I've got the eaves, and these are just 3-inch by 1/2-inch strips, and those are just going to go over the top like this. So I'm just showing you at the moment what I'm going to do and my arrangement, if you like, because we'll start with the sand. And the final little bit is just bunting, for which I've cut probably far too many triangles that measure about 1.5 inches long and 1 inch across the top, but again they can be any size you like. I can't stress enough with something like this, it really doesn't matter if everything ends up a bit higgledy-piggledy, because it looks deliberate, it looks fun. So let's move all of my pieces out of the way for now. Oh, I haven't put the fusible adhesive onto the back of the bunting, by the way. I'm just going to sew the top of that so it waves around a little bit. So let's start with the sand. And again, this is a piece of fabric about 6 inches deep by the width of the fabric. And I'm going to make dunes by simply cutting a gentle wavy line across the top of my fabric. So no rules here, it can be as wavy as you like. Like so. And then we'll take these 2 pieces, fold them right sides together. So remember, you've got to cut through both pieces at the same time, so you've got the same shape across the top of both. And then we'll sew. And I'm using a 1/4 inch seam allowance, but that doesn't have to be exact. So because I've got shapes with curves, I'm just going to snip into the curved bits, or the concave curves, because that'll help the seam to sit a little flat. Let's turn it the right side out. and we'll give that a press. So I'm just folding so that the seam's sitting right across the top. And press. There we go, that'll do. That'll all have another press before we've finished, I'm sure. So move you to one side, and then let's take our outer bag fabric. And this goes over the front like so. My son's a little bit wider than my bag, but that's fine, it's better than being shorter. I'll trim that down afterwards. All I'm going to do here is to sew across the top and a little way down the sides to hold it in place. Stick a few pins in if it helps. So just following the line of the top of the sand. I love these colours, it really makes me want to run down the beach with the grandchildren and buckets and spades, build sandcastles, look for crabs. So, just down the side. And I'm just sewing right within the seam allowance there, so it's purely to hold that piece in place. Maybe a few stitches across the bottom as well. Right, let's cut off this excess fabric here. And then we can start with the fun bit, which is putting on the beach houses. So let's bring in my mat. So I'm going to iron these in place. And first of all, let's arrange the huts. Now the easiest way to get off this paper backing is to just give it a bit of a scratch and peel it away. And you can see the shine there is actually the glue or the adhesive, which is going to hold this down. Number 2. You don't necessarily need tweezers, but it does help a little bit to get those papers off. And my spotty fabric is number 3. You could really quite go to town with these. I'm thinking if you like to free motion embroider, it'd be nice to do little seagulls in the sea or in the sky, or maybe buckets and spades and deck chairs. Make it as decorative as you like. So I could have these at different heights as well, actually. I think that would work. Lovely. Don't put the applique too close to the edge or too close to the bottom, because we're going to have French seams. It'll take about half an inch of each side. They end up being quite thick. So let's just pop these down, make sure they're all square and iron in place. Now I like to start from the bottom layers. So at this point I can sew the building, as in these, and the roofs, the triangular bits, and the doors. And again, I'm just going to use a straight stitch on my sewing machine because it's quicker. But if you wanted to, you could satin stitch, which is a very tight zigzag stitch all the way around, or free motion embroider. And if you're going to do that, I'd use a black stitch so your images really stand out. So should we have a blue roof in the middle? I'm going to overlap that slightly, so I only need to sew one line across to secure them. And let's have the red roof on the pink. So you never, well, you never throw anything away, but we certainly never throw fabric away. These are actually really small pieces of fabric that would maybe sometimes end up in the bin. So it's quite nice to have a purpose for them. I've only put the applique on one side of my bag, by the way. You could carry that onto the other side if you like. So those three will go on there. And it actually comes together quite quickly. And then just the doors at this stage. So you can go on there. The yellow one, I think, on the stripy hood. You could put buttons on for door handles as well, that'd be fun. And we'll have the pink one on the spot. And again, let's iron those in place. Right, so what I'm going to do is to take that off and snip that off, is to make a running stitch. So I'm going to use quite a short stitch on my sewing machine, and I'm going to sew around the complete outline, around the edge of the door and across each one of the roofs. When I've sewn those all together, I'm going to put the eaves of the roof on in the same way, and I'll sew all the way around the edge of each one of those. So I'll get on with that, and then we'll come back in a second or two and do the bunting. So that's how we're looking at the moment. So now I need to put the bunting on. Now do be aware that you're going to have a channel across the top here, which I'm going to use just a piece of bias binding for. So I don't want my bunting overlapping that. So I'm going to keep it just skimming the top of the roofs of my beach huts. So I'm going to draw a line with an erasable ink pen, and again just a wavy line to hang my bunting off. That'll do. And then I'm going to use my glue stick to just stick some of the pennants slightly overlapping the line, and again not too close to that seam at the side. And then I'm just going to sew over the top of these. Oh, hello, Bob. Hello. Oh, that was a bit urgent. Hello. Been out for a walk. Hello. We've just got back. Oh, it's so exciting. And we've gone out. And we're coming back. She might pop in and say hello in a minute. Oh, that's the cat. Right, so I'm just overlapping the edge here. Wasn't expecting that. Oh, hello. Come here then, come here. What? No, I'm just going to knock everything over. Hello. That's exciting. Should we move the iron out of the way? There we go. And sit down then. You're telling me all about it. Come on, go sit down. It smells like grass. She's off. There we were, having a nice, quiet, peaceful sew. I'd rather not have the nice, quiet, peaceful sew, to be honest. Nice having the pets around. We do have a sleeping cat over there, but she's not going to come and say hello. There we go. Because she's asleep. Now I've changed the colour of the thread on my sewing machine, and I'm using a triple straight stitch. So it gives a nice bold outline, because a straight stitch or a running stitch just won't stand out enough on this section. So it's like a back stitch. You normally use a triple straight stitch for stretch fabrics. So it takes a little longer to sew because the machine's going backwards and forwards. I know you can't see it at the moment, but you'll see when I finish the work it does make a nice solid line as you're sewing. So just following the line that I've drawn and catching the top of each one of the pennants as I come around. So they'll wave around a little bit. That does also mean that they will fray a little bit when you're washing. Actually, if you really don't want any fraying, then felt is probably a good option to use. But, oh, tap you out. There you go, there you can see I've got a nice solid line. Okay, now we're going to put these channels on the end, or on the top. So let's cut this to 13.5, about 13 inches in length. So narrower than my bag, but I'm also going to fold the ends over, so it'll be maybe an inch narrower than the bag at each end. And I'm going to put this 1.5 inches from the top. So not too close to the top. And we'll have a few pins in there to keep it in place. So you could measure this on your cutting table if you have a mat, or use a ruler. Just make sure it's nice and square. And fold over the other end. Then I'm just going to sew along the top and the bottom, and make sure that when you come to the ends, or when you start, that you backstitch a few times to stop it coming undone. So we'll do one of these on each side, one on the front here and one on the back of the bag. So there's the two channels sewn across the top parts of my bag, and remember to leave the ends open so that you can get the cord in there. What I'm going to do now is to hem across the top of each piece. So I've changed the colour of my thread back to the white again. And to do this, I'm simply going to fold over by about 1/4 inch twice, and then sew straight across to make that nice and neat across the top. And you'll need to do this on both pieces. So again, you can fold it, iron it and pin it as you go. I just find it easier to kind of roll that hem over as I'm sewing. And it's a lot quicker as well. By the time I've pinned it and unpinned it, I could have made 3 of these. Straight onto the second piece. Try and make sure that your fold on both pieces is the same, so you've got the same hem. And of course you could use a contrast coloured thread across here if you wanted to. Depends how much time you've got. And how confident you are in sewing in straight lines. Right, now we'll do the French seams. So this always feels a little bit alien, sewing things wrong sides together, because everything's always right sides together. This is wrong. So line up your 2 pieces, and again you can pin if you like. And I'm going to sew around the bottom 3 sides, quite close to the edge. So with a traditional seam allowance, you'll sew with your normal seam allowance and then trim it back. But this way you don't need to do any trimming. So I'm sewing about 1/8 inch from the raw edge all the way around. So again, stop with the needle in the down position whenever you stop. Right into the corner. It's a little bit too far, and then straight across the bottom. Keeping everything nice and square. And then back down the final side. Make sure the top hems are meeting. Okay. So I've got a very fine hem all the way around. Now I'm going to turn the bag the right side, or the wrong side out I should say. So it's just always feels a bit odd doing this. And I'm going to use my bamboo creaser just to help push out the points. So this is the inside of the bag, remember. And I'm going to sew all the way around that same hemline again. But this time I'm going to make the seam allowance a little bit wider, so just over 1/4 inch, and that'll trap inside there the seam that I've just sewn. So you'll have a neat edge on the inside and on the outside of your bag. So make sure the seam is sitting right on the edge. And so. Right, that's it with the sewing. So let's turn our bag the right side out. And again, let's push out the corners. And you will have a lovely neat seam on the outside and a lovely neat seam on the inside with no raw edges showing. So this is French seam. This is the kind of seam that you would use on very fine fabrics or sheer fabrics where you don't want to see a really big hem or you don't want to see the raw edges on the inside, but it's not suitable for lining. But this makes a lovely finish on a bag that doesn't have any lining, and you don't want to finish off the seams on the inside with a zigzag stitch or pinking shears. It just looks really neat on both sides, as you can see. So the last thing we're going to do is to put our cord through. So to do this, I'm using a rather large safety pin, and I'm going to catch quite a few threads of cord so it doesn't come off the pin, and simply push through. So what are you going to use your bag for? Is it going to be for the beach? You're going to be keeping your, I don't know, your swimming costumes or your reading things in here, your suntan lotions? Is it going to be as a wash bag? Maybe to store toys, make a nice toy bag. You could do a whole beach hut themed child's bedroom. Would look so much fun and so colourful, wouldn't it? You're going to have a few. Maybe one for each member of the family. Put their names on them, personalise them. Leave me a comment below. I'd love to know who you're making them for, what you think about the tutorial. And of course, don't forget to subscribe if you like it. There's lots more. And in fact, I send you notifications in between times as well. So when I'm not actually sewing and bringing you videos, there's notifications of other things that I'm doing in my life, in my world of sewing, threads and fabrics, just to keep you updated. Right, let's tie the two ends of this together. And there's my bag finished. And to close it, I simply draw the drawstring up, and then I can hang this up on the back of the door and keep things nice and tidy. Well, I hope you've enjoyed the tutorial. I hope you've enjoyed making yours, and I hope you enjoy your holiday. I'll see you soon.